Morning.
We're live.
Good afternoon. It's 4:40 on the 19th of March, 2021. We have a voting session here for the House Judiciary Committee. We are going to deal with a few bills as we come up to the crossover deadline. We're going to go back now to someplace where we were this morning. Delegate Barron's bill, House Bill 882, work group to study partial expungement. It's a group that was needed to be created because it was part of a bill that was vetoed by the governor and expired before we got the chance to override the veto. So to that end,
move favorable again.
Yeah, so we're moving favorable. The question that was asked, and there was a second, I think, already on. We had amendments. I believe we adopted the amendments. We were on the favorable, and there was a second. So Delegate Grammer asked the question about DPSCS and why they were not there. I've been in communication with the sponsor, with Delegate Barron. They were not on it last year. They were passing the same bill that was sort of globally agreed to in 2020. He also spoke to Secretary Green, and he had said they don't need to be on it, and they can just advise. So to that end, that's the answer to that. Delegate Moon.
I just want to add, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add, since I forgot the sordid history of this bill, that it was vetoed, and I'm not sure we should allow vetoing entities to now amend these things after the fact. So let's carry on.
All right, here we go. Is there further questions? Delegate Arakan now with the question.
Perhaps it was vetoed because they were left off.
I don't think it was vetoed because they were left off, but I think it was vetoed for other reasons, but at least that's what the letter said. So, okay, here we are. We're on the bill as amended. Is there further discussion on the bill as amended? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But on the bill as amended, anything else? Don't see anything else. The Vice Chair.
Yes.
Delegate Arakan.
No.
Delegate Bartlett.
Yes.
Delegate Cardin.
Yes.
Conaway.
Yes.
Dan Cox is still excused. Crutchfield.
Yes.
Deborah Davis.
Yes.
Juanica Fisher.
Yes.
Robin Grammer.
Yes.
Mike Griffith. Why am I calling everybody by their first name now? I'm sorry. It's this. Rachel Jones.
Yes.
Lopez.
Yes.
Malone.
No.
McComas.
No.
Moon.
Yes.
Shetty.
Yes.
Cham.
This is 882.
882.
My constituents would want me to say yes.
Okay. Ron Watson.
Yes.
Nicole Williams.
Yes.
Looks like 15-4. What I have? Okay, great. Now we're going to go to Delegate Malone's bill, House Bill 1250, to study the laws of intestacy. Intestacy, everyone, is when you die without a will, and everybody should have a will.
Yeah, don't do it.
And you should go and do it. There is an amendment. It would add a representative to the Register of Wills Association, from the Register of Wills Association, and would, to the extent, say that members appointed to the task force should reflect the racial, ethnic, cultural, and gender diversity of the state. All right.
Amendment.
Move favorable.
We're moving the amendments.
Second.
Is there a second? Yes, okay. Some amendments moved and seconded. All in favor of the amendments, raise your hands. We've been doing that, so let's just do that for this. Can I have the big screen? Thank you. Delegates Fisher, Malone, Shetty, Cardin, Bartlett, Moon, Grammer, Rachel Jones, Williams, McComas, Arakan, Lopez, Deborah Davis, Crutchfield, Cham, Conaway, and Atterbury. Anybody opposed? Seeing nobody opposed, unless Delegate Malone just wants to keep his hand up.
Say Watson.
Amendments adopted. We're now on the bill as amended, and Watson. Delegate Juanita Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to publicly thank Delegate Malone for taking my concern in the makeup of his task force for this study. I really appreciated that extra effort. And just wanted to thank him for that, and that it was very important. So thank you so much, Delegate Malone, and I'll be voting in favor of this bill. Thank you.
You are very welcome, and thank you for pointing out the need for that additional amendment. I think makes it a better bill.
Move favorable.
All right. I think we're already moving favorable, and there was a second, but here's Delegate Cardin with a question.
Real quick, this has anything to do that you didn't add anything on the Orphans Court Task Force on this, did you?
No.
Good. I just want to make sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll roll call. The Vice Chair,
Yes.
Delegate Arakan,
Yes.
Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Cardin, in the car, Delegate Cardin, whose screen is frozen. Delegate Conaway.
All right, yeah.
Yes.
You hear me? Yes.
Okay, Cardin votes yes, Conaway votes yes. Crutchfield,
Yes.
Deborah Davis,
Yes.
Juanita Fisher,
Yes.
Grammer,
Yes.
Griffith,
Yes.
Rachel Jones,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Malone,
Yes.
McComas,
Yes.
Moon,
Yes.
Shetty,
Yes.
Cham,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
15. Speaking of the Orphans Court Task Force, we passed this bill last year, House Bill 681. There is an amendment. The amendment would strike. It would strike a member of the judiciary, I believe.
Yes, I think that's right, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Strikes.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Move the amendment.
Motion to move the amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of the amendment? I think this is a basic amendment. Say aye.
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 Right, well, I'm sorry. We'll do that one on a voice. Anybody opposed? All right, the amendment on
Favorable.
this task force bill. There's a motion on the bill
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Vice Chair,
Yes.
Arakan,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Cardin,
No, I fought like a tiger.
Conaway, Conaway,
Yes.
okay. Crutchfield,
Yes.
Deborah Davis,
Mr. Chair, I've got several calls about this from my constituents, and I want to make it clear that this is a study. This is not getting rid of the Orphans Court.
that is
So, yes.
correct.
Yes.
All right. Juanita Fisher,
Yes.
Grammer,
Yes.
Griffith,
Yes.
Rachel Jones,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Malone,
Joining my good delegate from Baltimore County from the other party. Fought like a tiger, no.
McComas,
Yes.
Moon,
Yes.
Shetty,
Yes.
Cham,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
17. Okey dokey. All right, now we're going to go to House Bill 75, which is a little bit different. Discussion, to be sure. We're going to go to House Bill 75 now. House Bill 75 is Delegate Chi's bill. And I'm offering amendments to the bill. The point of her bill was to create nonpartisan elections for circuit court judges. The amendments to the bill would be to eliminate the primary elections for circuit court judges. We don't elect circuit court judges with party labels. We don't elect circuit court judges with party labels, but under the current system, we presently have primaries in both the Democratic and Republican primaries, where the judges run on both sides in both the Democratic and the Republican electorates. What Delegate Chi was seeking to address was a way to allow independents to be able to vote in those judges' elections in the primary. And it struck me that the best way to go forward, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit around the committee, but best way to go forward would just be to simply eliminate the primary election altogether and have the judges run in the fall. So the judges would run in the fall under this bill. They would file, I think, in August proceeding. They would, that's when they would file. They would not have a party label. They would run in a nonpartisan election that would be on the ballot right then and there. I think there are reasons that have been put forward both ways to do this. My interest in this is, there are a couple reasons. One of the challenges in running for judge, as all of us are aware as we run for office, is fundraising. And the majority of money that goes into these judges' races are coming from people who will usually practice law in front of those judges. By taking away one of the elections, you will lower the cost of these elections and you will lower the need for these people to fundraise. Furthermore, I would just personally say, I don't think that the election system should be effectively, should exist to make it easier or necessarily harder for anyone to get elected. The election system should be an election system. If you want to run for judge, you should run for judge, and you can do that. You can do that in the fall. I think the current process where you have to navigate going through two primaries, where you're talking to two different electorates, while on the one hand is okay because you're talking to both major parties, you're not talking to about a third of the voters. And it's entirely possible that by the end of the primary process, you could in fact get elected judge without talking to a huge chunk of the population in the state. And so to that end, I think it makes sense to get rid of the primary, but there are people who have questions. And we're going to be on the amendment here. So first, let's do this. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the amendment and ask for a second, and then we'll take discussion. So
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to adopt the amendment. So we'll start with Delegate Cardin and then start working our way through. Delegate Cardin.
Chair, thank you very much for the thought that you've put into this legislation. My comment is, I don't know if it's a question, but it's more of a comment that you could maybe react to. Is this really doesn't move us towards getting, all it does is reduce from two to one election. If we really want to solve the problem, I think we should rip off the Band-Aid. That's my comment. However, you do make a very good point that one of the issues that I raised with my judicial elections bill is fundraising. And this might reduce the amount of fundraising required, but it also may reduce the amount of time that a judge sort of learns how to be an appointed judge who is running as a sitting judge, has to learn how to properly be a candidate, given that they're not really supposed to be candidates. And for those reasons, I want to support the legislation. I just think that we should be aware that this is in no way going to stop or move us towards ridding ourselves of judicial elections. I think we need to keep that on. I think that we also need to take a close look at this over the next couple elections and see if it is hurting or helping the process for judges to be effectively selected.
Delegate Conaway, then McComas, Juanita Fisher, and Malone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the amendment that's before us is to do what? Is to move it from both elections to just the primary election for the judge?
Correct. So to file for judge, to run for judge, you would have to simply file for the general election. And to do that, you would file, I think it's 3 months in advance.
And if I may, could you ask Delegate Cardin what he means by ripping off the, what does that mean?
Yeah, Delegate Cardin has legislation that would completely eliminate or would eliminate the elections process for circuit court judges altogether. There are some people who believe that we should completely eliminate that process. And
Okay.
I'm not really seeking to touch that with this amendment.
Right.
What I'm seeking to address is I don't understand why we have a primary election when
Right. Oh,
you're
okay.
nonpartisan.
Well, on the amendment, I would like to say in my district, you have 3 delegates, 1 senator, and the seated judges can reach out to us and be on our ballots if they would like to be. So that's a kind of advantage to be a seated delegate or seated senator, because you have a block group of people. So in other words, I'm against this amendment. Let the judges, if the judges reach out to the delegates, then they already have 3 or 4 natural friends.
Okay, let's go now to Delegate McComas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what I'm kind of concerned about is the judiciary didn't like the bill initially going in, where you had, I guess, the 2 elections, and there would be a special ballot for the that were non-affiliated to vote. What I'm kind of concerned is I could see a scenario where, okay, there's a pile-on to run for judge. You know, you could have like 10, 12 people running for judge unless there's a limit. And I didn't look at the amendment that so basically you could have like 20 people, and Amy Abel might be at the top of the ballot because she's got an A. So I just not sure this is going to solve our problem. And that's my thought. And in other words, I think there's a way that they'll work around that would be worse than what we've currently got.
Delegate Malone.
I was trying to pull up the numbers. Here's, if part of the goal is to get the money out of it, I'm not sure the goal is achieved. And here is why. The reality is, if you win both sides, the race is over in the primary. And I looked at Anne Arundel County regarding the general election in 2020. In the general election, 300,000 people voted. And I'm trying to look up, we'll see how well I can multitask, how many total people voted in the primary. But typically the primary vote is pretty small. So as far as trying to win both sides, it may be cheaper to try to win both sides and be over and done with it in the primary, and more expensive to have to put all your marbles in the general. Now, I hear your argument as far as disenfranchising independent voters, but and that has, I believe, some validity, but I think the issue as far as cheaper is you may actually get a completely different result because there's going to be throw all the money at the general election and you're throwing at a whole lot more voters. And that means you got to spend more money because that's who you got to do the, a lot of it's done by mailing because you're running county-wide for these races, which means it's very hard to get to every civic organization that affects things. Other unintended consequences is sometimes the primary is a wake-up call to somebody who may be running. Maybe they lose one side and now they realize they need to be more serious about it. And then I've heard argument when this was discussed previously, it also may be a detriment to challengers in that maybe they sort of want to put their name out and they get their name out in the primary by winning one side of a primary. I just think there's more to it, and candidly, this could be voted on in 2000. I guess the question is, does this have to be put on the ballot? And you said no.
No, it doesn't have to be put on the ballot, but this is one of those things where if it was going to be effective for the next election, it would need to be, you'd have to do it in this year because the filing deadline is February. So by the time we came back, you wouldn't be able to do it for next year. All right, Delegate Deborah Davis. Everybody's going to talk. It's fantastic. I love this. Delegate Deborah Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the conversation. And I come from a jurisdiction where we love the election of judges. And I've heard the argument over and over and over again regarding the impediments that people have to running, or people think we have to running. And I think we should deal with those impediments rather than removing people's right to vote. And I know that we've only diversified our bench because of the election of judges. And I know that's not the topic, but I want to talk about something that Malone said, is that one of the unintended consequences might be that we're going to have 15 people on the ballot in the general election. Because if you have in the primary elections, you kind of weed people out, right? So now everybody is going to run in the general, and I'm not sure that's a good or a bad thing, but I guess I just wanted to say that. But I'm not carding with the fact that we need to pull the Band-Aid off or anything like that, because it really is different depending on what jurisdiction you come from.
Yeah. All right, Delegate Rachel Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Malone and Delegate Davis on the points that they've already made, but I think one of my questions or concerns is with this amendment, moving them only to the general election instead of more of an open primary. I think my concern is if a circuit court judge is serving a 15-year term and you don't jump in until the general election, have residents really had enough of an opportunity to get to know you, to gauge what kind of judge you'll be, to know whether or not this is like the right person? Because I'm seeing that from all, I thought that amendment said something like you would file no later than, was it the first week in August or something? So if you're looking at August to November, you have 3 months essentially to, get out into the community to make sure that people understand like what kind of judge you might be. And I just don't know if that's really enough time for a community to decide, if this judge or if this person is who I want deciding on cases for 15 years.
I think the argument coming the other way against that is that that's pretty much the existing system, that they would have 3 months before the primary. As it stands right now, you have the filing deadline pretty much the same distance before the election, before the primary election. So the same argument I think applies, that people who were either running and they weren't on the bench, or running and they were on the bench, could conceivably only have that period of time even before a primary election where arguably you have some winnowing process for people to see who you are. I think, honestly, I think that if you're interested in running for circuit court judge, you're probably going to be running considerably in advance of that. I think that you're going to be engaged in what's going on, and you're not going to wait until the last minute to file and do that. Furthermore, this goes to, I guess, sort of the broader issue of looking at the judges who are appointed. They still, they would still need to be appointed by the governor. The governor traditionally doesn't appoint during the legislative session. And I still think that they would be appointed far enough in advance to get, at least if you're the sitting judge, and if you're concerned about the sitting judges, some kind of a head start. I guess very quickly, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, but just taking this little interlude, and then I'll go to Grammer, Griffith, Watson, and Conaway. I mean, the issue about the number of people who could be running for judge, I don't know that, to me, that really is that big a deal. If you want to run for judge, run for judge. And the people who should be voting on the universe of people who want to run for judge, it shouldn't just be limited to the party primary electorates on the Democratic and Republican Party side. You're running to be judge for the entire county, not for one part of the jurisdiction. And so to me, it seems like if you want to have that openness and that engagement from everybody, you'd want to just vote it in the general and have everybody vote at the same time. But I've talked a little too much for now, and I'll stop for a bit and keep taking notes. Delegate Grammer, then Griffith and Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things. I think Delegate Malone made an extremely valid point, which I didn't consider. I was in a 9-way primary my first time, and I took third. I got outspent 4-1 by the guy who took fourth place. And had I not had a primary, I would probably have been completely swallowed in that process. And I think I sympathize a lot with him here. But my question relates to Delegate Jones's comments in the 3-month period. Can someone refresh me as to what the filing deadline is for delegate and senator? Because I want to compare my experience to that of a judge. Just
90 days.
In council?
I think it's 90 days prior to the
primary
date of the election. So you've got to, so actually the filing period for the 2022 elections they've already opened. They start a year in advance of the close of the filing period. So that, I think, was February 26th. So if you're,
but when do they close?
Now on file.
But when do they close?
They close on February 26th. So actually, in that case, I think they're 4 months prior. I need to take another quick look, and I'm doing math. So October, September, August. I think that it's right. So that would be, I think it's the same length of time. And I'm looking at staff. We'll double check to make sure that the filing date, okay, a candidate for circuit court judge shall file a certificate of candidacy no later than the first Monday in August in the year of the general election for the office.
Yeah.
And that's for the general.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I just sympathize with some of the other comments that have been made. I think if we have just a general, there's going to be some real shenanigans. And I think that kind of environment helps people that have a lot of money and they're just like, it's an open judge seat, or whatever seat. And they could come in at the last minute and squeeze somebody out. So I have some concerns here.
I guess my response to that would be, and I'm not going to do this for everybody. My response to that would be, what keeps them from doing that right now? They can do that right now. And in fact, it's probably easier because the electorate, they only have to win the Democratic side or the Republican side. They
Well,
only have to win one side or the other. And that could be a lot easier to do, not a lot harder.
And I think to Delegate Malone's point, when you're forced to go into a primary, yeah, it's a weird thing because it's a primary, but I mean, you've got to be committed to that race for the long term. And if someone says something silly and there's a gaffe in the news and someone says, oh, there's an opportunity, I have 50 grand, I can hop in here. And I just think that this longer process, it kind of puts a bulwark on the short-term shenanigans of an election. That's my feeling.
All right, Delegate Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me give a little different perspective on this. You know, back in 2016, I ran for an at-large position as a school board member, and there were 16 of us. And I don't think that the number of folks, if it's large, is an impediment at all. I just think it's an opportunity for a bigger pool of candidates to be vetted by the community. Secondly, any election I've been in, there's always been an election date, and by which you have to file. And I've always complained because some organizations start vetting candidates before that deadline. And the reason I raise that is because there's nothing that stops a candidate from getting their butts out there, start pounding the pavement and get their name recognition up. And lastly, specifically with respect to the bill, I think 2/3 of the time, this bill will save candidates money, right? So in a blue county like Prince George's, where Democrats, have the numbers, if a candidate hits Democrats, that's really all they got to worry about. And they'll cruise through an easy election. Likewise, in a red district. So in a purple district, that's the 1/3, where it's 50-50, you got to hit everybody. And even in the current configuration, you'd have to hit everybody anyway. And so I can't see any downside to this bill whatsoever. I think it makes sense, and I think it's well thought out. And this is the type of bill, that I've been considering for our school board races, to be honest with you. So I'm in full support of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I actually have a little bit of unique perspective on this. I was very involved in a lot of campaigns last cycle up here. I was running for Central Committee. And I want to say this as clever as I possibly can. I watch candidates go to a Republican event and have a red shirt on, and then literally go across the street, put on a blue shirt, and go to a Democrat event. And I watched people campaigning for judges being whoever they needed to be. And listen, there's a certain level of this in all campaigns, but it was such a drastic level. And I watched this, and frankly, I watched a Democrat win a Republican primary during this. So I'm not sure how much at least what I witnessed, at least in Hartford County last cycle. I actually found the judge candidates struggling with the fact that they're having to not be everything to everybody, but challenge their own beliefs because they had to be very, very political during the primary versus just run for judge in a general sense. And I think Doug Watson mentioned this, that they can start campaigning way early on. I'm just watching how it went down, watching how frustrated I was with the process. I don't know why we wouldn't do this.
All right, Delegate Conaway for a second bite, and then Juanica Fisher and Eric Yan. Delegate Conaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the next time the judge's election would come up would be in 2037. Is that correct?
No, the next judge election, depending on whether there's a vacancy for a circuit court judge, would be in 2022.
No, but the one after that.
General.
The one after that, that would be another 15 years.
The term that the judge serves is a 15-year term, so it depends on when they were appointed. I'm sorry, when they were elected. So yes. So then there's a vacancy after 15 years.
Thank you very much.
All right. Delegate Juanita Fisher.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for your work on this bill. I just had a technical question for you. If somebody filed to run for something else, like let's say county exec or something like that, and in a county like mine, where we're very Democratic heavy, as Delegate Watson said, and that person lost, the person that lost could still file for judge in the general, or does this prevent that? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think that they
if they were a lawyer,
lost.
obviously.
Yeah, I mean, if they lost, they could conceivably run for judge. That would be I mean, first of all, you do have to meet the requirements to be.
Yeah, I was just asking if the bill prevented that or not, just a technical.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
I think there's a bill on the Senate side that's addressing that, Mr. Chair.
yeah, and I think that's to do generally. It's the sore loser or something like that. They run, but then they try to get put on a ballot, another party's ballot after that. This didn't have anything to do with that. So this is separate from that.
Thank you.
Yep, sure. Delegate Arakan.
I'm still having trouble deciding what I'm going to do on this bill. I mean, Delegate Griffith, right? We had exactly what he described happen, and it not turned out well for our county, unfortunately. But I'm having a hard time whenever you tell your voters that you're taking away an opportunity for them to vote. It just doesn't feel good. You know, I'm not sure how I can message that, because it's just another opportunity they would have had to weigh in on somebody that's really affecting all the lives of our citizens now. So even I don't know how I'm going to end up voting on this in the next 5 minutes yet. So nobody's really pushed me one way or the other so far, but it's hard.
All I will say is I think the way that you can talk about this back home is very simple. It means that everybody gets the chance to vote for judge, and with respect to Delegate Malone, I mean, he does make a point in saying, you know, you might win in the primary and it's over. And I guess my question is, if you're going to have an election process for judge, is that actually a good thing? That you won the 2-party primaries and now you're done. And it strikes me again that if it's a judge who has to sit in judgment, if the judge who has to serve in the circuit court for the county, shouldn't it be somebody who was elected, who was elected by the entire electorate in that election as opposed to part of it? So
I know, I hear you, but I think almost everybody, I'm looking now for this, almost everybody in our committee, we basically only had primaries.
I don't question. Sandy.
Oh
Bartlett,
wait, Sandy's raising her hand.
Sandy
All
Bartlett, no.
Almost all of us.
And Delegate Grammer would say no. But
that's true. That's true.
I mean, I'll go to that point again. Okay, so why double down into that? I guess is one thing. But I have 2 more. Delegate Bartlett. And then the vice chair, Delegate Bartlett.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything until Delegate Arakan said she was having trouble with this, because I was too. I was having trouble with it until I did a Google search. And I looked up how many independent voters in Maryland, and I saw the number 766,788. Then I looked at how many unaffiliated voters in Anne Arundel, and and there are 90,000 unaffiliated voters in Anne Arundel County. That was as of 2020. And in this report, they were saying how the trend has been, the number is growing. So that convinced me. And I think it is important for everyone. If you're gonna be subject to judgment, by the judge, then I think you should definitely get a chance to vote on that person. So that's why I'm going to be voting favorably.
All right. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Delegate Bartlett just made my point. I know that when I was running, I had a lot of folks who I know would support me, one including my brother, that had to go and change from being an independent to being a Democrat just so that they could actually vote for me. And then they went right back to being an independent because that's how strongly they felt about being independent. And so I think in Howard County, the number of independent voters, I mean, it's just growing. And so I think that in particularly my county, they should have an opportunity, particularly since what we just went through with our judges, to be able to vote on the judges in Howard County. And I will say this whole underlying issue of how we elect our judges, it is complicated, and I see everybody's argument on that. I honestly thought I was one way on that. And then we had this whole situation that happened in Howard County this past election where, I mean, the election to watch was the judges race because nobody paid attention in the primary. You had an African-American male come out of the Democratic primary, a white male come out of the Republican primary who was endorsed by a lot of Democrats, including our Attorney General, because he was a sitting judge. And it turned into an incredibly divisive about party and about race. And I mean, we were just getting lobbied so heavily on that issue. So I do think that's like not this bill. I know that, Mr. Chair, that we need to figure that out at some point and put all of our heads together because that's tough. But I think for my county, in terms of all of the independent voters that there are, that I think having the election in the general would benefit Howard County. So I'll support the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. So here is where we are. We are on the bill. We're not on the bill. We're on the amendment to the bill that would strike the primary election for circuit court judges and make it just a general election for circuit court judges. They would have to file by the first Monday in the August before the election, which is always on an even numbered year. I just to close and you know, I think this is actually a pretty important issue. I do think this is something that I think that the debate and the conversation that we've had here has been very good. I think the question really fundamentally here is to the point that Delegate Bartlett made. You know, the judges are on the bench and they're representing all of us, Democrats, independents, Republicans, Green parties, libertarians, the whole 9 yards, and unaffiliated. And so I just think it's the right thing to do. And it goes to what Delegate Chi was trying to do in this bill, was find a way forward so that unaffiliated people can participate. But I think that the better way to do it is not to kind of build a system around it, is just to say, okay, everybody's voting in this election, let's vote at that time. So with that, we're on the amendment. And what I'll do is I'll do a roll call and we'll go from there. All right, the Vice Chair.
Yes.
Delegate Arakan.
Yes.
Delegate Bartlett.
Yes.
Delegate Cardin.
On the amendment, yes, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Conaway.
On the amendment, no.
Delegate Cox.
Yes.
Delegate Field.
Oh, did you call me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I did.
No, not on the amendment.
Okay. Delegate Davis.
Yes.
Delegate Wanika Fisher.
Yes.
Delegate Grammer.
No.
Delegate Griffith.
Yes.
Delegate Rachel Jones.
Pass.
We don't let you do.
Okay, yes.
Delegate Lopez,
Yes.
Delegate Malone,
Yes.
Delegate McComas.
What am I voting on? I hate to.
You're voting on the amendment that would change the bill to eliminate the primary election for circuit court judges.
Yeah, I think the more exposure we have to these folks, the better. So I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Delegate Moon,
I really don't like the elections in general, and that's always from the first day I got here. I said I was not in favor of judicial elections. I support, I guess in theory, I support getting rid of the primary along that vein, because we had people in the last election advertising, standing with pictures of Trump and Biden signs, and I just find it weird for judges to be doing that sort of thing. I have to say, I'm going to support this amendment because philosophically, I agree with that. But I will acknowledge, I think people aren't going to help but be able to interpret what we're doing here based on how they felt about the last election. And so I feel like I'm sorry, I don't usually talk during a vote, but I feel like I have to say that.
okay, thank you. Delegate Shetty,
Yes.
Delegate Cham,
No.
Delegate Watson,
Yes, for keeping nonpartisan judges from voting in a partisan race.
Delegate Williams,
I'm very torn about this one. And I think some of it goes back to some of the comments that Delegate Davis had and others. I do believe in keeping the electoral process for the judges. I actually like the original bill. But I do understand all of the points that were made. To vote. So I'm gonna vote yes.
on the amendment. There are 15 in favor of the amendment, 5 against. The amendment is adopted. We're now on the bill as amended.
Chair for a hold.
You like a hold?
Yes.
Who just used their hold?
I did.
Malone would like to use a hold.
Unless somebody else wants to.
No, too late. Too late. You did it.
You use the
My
hold.
hand was up to ask a question. Sorry, Malone.
My hand was up too, but I'm gonna let it go.
All right. So
Can you, Luke, when are you planning on voting this? I just need some more time to think about it.
that's fine. When is floor? It's
10 o'clock tomorrow.
we will plan on voting tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Oh, man.
No, I'm sorry, we can't do that. It has to be closer than that, doesn't it? Does that have to be 10:30?
Yeah, 10:30 is good.
Yeah, it has to be 10:30. So we will vote 10:30 tomorrow. We have one more that we have to do tonight. And there are amendments. One more bill. One more bill. Coming back.
Question.
If I can have the committee's just indulgence for a second. And this is Delegate Conway has a question.
Yes, how many bills are we voting on tomorrow?
At the moment, one.
That seems like you're punishing us for asking for a hold. Why can't we do it after session?
We because we have a limited number of sessions before crossover, and I think that we can get this done relatively quickly. Not really punishing you.
It is, you're punishing.
Punishing you would have been depleted. I think that, I mean, I think that we can deal with the vote tomorrow at 10:30 and be done and be on the floor. Delegate Arakan?
So you said we only have one more bill today, and now the one that we just held, we have tomorrow.
Yeah.
Weren't we gonna vote on Wade's Law also?
Oh, we've got that one too. I was going to do the one today, and then we've got Wade's Law as well. So there are a couple bills that we can deal with tomorrow. All right. Let's go to House Bill 531. I'm trying also to be sensitive to time. The Senate has passed a version of this bill earlier, I think today. Delegate Juanica Fisher has amendments to the bill. And we will go with the first amendment, which is 553923. Delegate Fisher, if you'd like to explain what the amendment does.
Sure, Mr. Chair. I don't know if council is going to share the page for people to see them or if people already have them. But amendment number 1 is just, oh, Mr. Chair, I think someone has their hand up, but.
Delegate Davis.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to use my hold.
All right, so then we'll take up this bill tomorrow. We'll take up this bill tomorrow at 10:30 as well. But now we have a couple more bills, so we may need more time. All right, we'll work out the schedule beforehand, but for now, we're going to stop. So the holds on the last 2 bills, those are the holds that can be used. There are no more holds that can be put on those bills, so we're going to deal with both of them tomorrow at 10:30. All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we could also do a voting session later this evening if you see fit.
Second that.
Well, we could do a voting session later this evening if that gives people the time they need to think about 75 and to think about 531. What's the committee's pleasure? We could come back at 6:30.
Sounds good.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I guess I got a point of order question. Could somebody exercise a hold on 75 again?
No.
Why are we doing a second hold down on 31?
No, it's a different bill. You can do a hold on a bill. This is one hold on one bill. So 531.
We already did a hold on 531.
No, I'm sorry. That is in fact the case. We did do a hold on that. Delegate Fisher did a hold on that. And that's right. She did use the hold on 531. So we're back again on House Bill 531. I appreciate that. I forgot that Delegate Fisher had requested the hold on that. And that's correct. We can't use the second hold there. So now, never mind. Back to 531. Delegate Fisher has an amendment ending in 923.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, let's go back. Go ahead.
So can I go ahead, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so thank you, committee. So I have a few amendments on this bill. On page 1, basically, it substitutes requiring. Instead of requiring, it would be authorizing a judge to impose this sort of registry rather than requiring. I know that issues were brought up to me, Mr. Chair, and I would defer to either Holly or Claire because I'm not sure who drafted the amendment. My intention was with this amendment to allow a judge to decide or make that determination if the defendant would be put on this lifetime registry. Can you hear me? Okay. With the new body of crimes in the age range that's presented in the bill. It was not my intention to change anything that's already existing law. I know that was highlighted with the amendments. I'm not sure exactly how the amendment language could be changed to reflect that, but that's what I requested in the amendment, and that what we're adding to the lifetime availability, the lifetime registry, that a judge's discretion on whether that defendant should be on that registry would qualify for what this bill is trying to do, not what's already current law. That was my intent. So I would defer to counsel if something needs to be changed to reflect that. And then also this amendment would allow this if the person, the defendant, is a family member to the victim in question, or the victim of the case. Talking to several different advocacy groups and actual sexual assault advocacy groups, there were concerns about the broadness of this bill. And so I think that this amendment set to me brings a good, sort of a good policy point of including the crimes for the crimes against older children as a part of it, but that a judge could decide whether that defendant should be on there for a lifetime or not. And then the defendant should be a family relation to the child. So that is the intention behind this amendment. Yeah, that's the intention. So I know there's I think there is a technical issue. I'm not trying to change existing law. So if counsel would help with that correction, that was not my intent in the amendment, but I think it might have read that way.
Delegate Arakan.
I guess I'm just confused as to why this is needed, because the original bill's very narrowly focused on only people who have temporary custody of a child.
Yeah, can I address that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I know, I understand that, Delegate Arakan, and I think temporary custody can be broad. So for example, when I was talking to a couple of other attorneys and things like that, someone can have temporary custody of the child who is babysitting that child, has custody of that child, a babysitter. One could be, I actually had a situation, someone brought to an example of actually like an older teenager, for example, can have custody of another younger child and have influence. That could be the tutor that's coming to the house, you know what I mean, on a regular basis, and multiple things. So as much as it is sort of narrowly tailored in that way, Delegate Arakan, I think this amendment, and again, I would want to, Mr. Chair allows the opportunity for counsel to correct. My intention behind the amendment was that the judge can make that determination on the categories that this bill is allowing. Again, I have no intention of changing existing law that we already have. And that I think this will narrowly tailor this in giving discretion to a judge, and then also the relation to the victim.
Okay, so the goal of the amendment is to, for instances where it is like a coach or a babysitter who's raped a minor child, there's going to be more discretion. So maybe that rapist doesn't need to be under long-term supervision.
I think I haven't practiced law as long as some of my wonderful colleagues on this call, but for a little while. And I would say that every case has a different set of facts and all kinds of things. I mean, we would be here for hours. And so I think a judge is seeing that case, and a judge is the best person to make that determination.
Right. So this is just giving them the opportunity, if they think that this rapist needs to be followed, this child rapist needs to be followed, then they can be, but they don't have to be.
Yes, for the new categories that this bill is proposing.
Delegate Grammer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the amendment, Delegate Fisher. Am I correct in reading that the amendment would limit the application of this law to family members?
My intention was, again, I was not the bill amendment drafter.
I understand.
There or someone to help me maybe correct the amendment, but I wanted it to be basically in my head when I was trying to draft the amendment was, I think there should be discretion for excuse me, for the new, for the older child victims that we're discussing. But I do think when it's a family relation, that you don't necessarily need the may, it can be a shall when the defendant is actually related to the child. Does that make sense?
So your intention is in the case of a family member that it's a shall, but otherwise may.
Yeah. Do you get what I'm saying? I think that narrows.
I understand your
I
intention.
just don't think it was drafted in that way, and I think like the amendment office has had a lot of amendments when I requested it. So I don't think that's clear. So as of now, but that was my intention and in both amendments.
I think I understand your intention. I'm curious. Okay, I think I understand. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Delegate, oops, I've lost my list. Delegate Malone, then Cox.
I encourage the resistance of this amendment. I mean, I actually think some of the folks that I, as a parent, would be most concerned about needing to continue on supervised contact would be those that aren't family members. And my rationale is this: if it's a family member that's improperly touched my child, well, guess what? That family member has now just become persona non grata. But if it is a non-family member that has done it, I may not know that they have these tendencies. And that's why I think the supervision is all the more important for the non-family members to protect people that would not know. So from a policy standpoint, I think this amendment needs to be resisted and the bill needs to remain in the form that it currently exists.
Mr. Chair, can I address that?
Yes, please.
So I understand that, but from the bill hearing and from everything that has been said around this bill, the issue was with a family member, which was a father and a child. And so I think that really negates what you're saying, because all of the advocacy on the other side of this issue was that it was within the family and that it needed to be lifetime. And also from my poly perspective, from my view too, the family relation to the victim is for a lifetime. So for me, it makes more sense that, okay, you have to be on a registry for a lifetime because your relation to the victim is for a lifetime, versus if you're an individual who was the coach or the babysitter, you may move to another state, you may move away from those people. Obviously, you just said they would be persona non grata, like you're going to keep that person away from your kid. So I think that this bill I'm going to just be very forthcoming. There are a lot of concerns about this bill. And I think that this amendment a lot. And I think that this amendment makes it tailored and palatable in that way that, and again, Mr. Chair, when after the questions, if council could have an opportunity to help correct the intentions of the amendments, the amendment would keep it, the hope is to keep it a required shall for if you're a family relation to that victim. But if you're not, the judge can make the determination. And I think that to me makes sense because again, the defendant in this case, regardless of you're gonna or not, is gonna be related to that child for a lifetime. And everything that I heard that was inundated in my inbox was that this was an issue within a family that brought this bill.
May I respond?
Yes, Delegate Malone, go ahead.
I think that was the testimony, the oral testimony that was presented. But if you look at all of the written testimony, it wasn't necessarily family members. And candidly, we have the church, we have scouts that are facing tens of thousands of lawsuits that weren't children of the abuser. They were unrelated individuals. I mean tens of thousands. So you're putting at risk tens of thousands of children with this amendment.
Well, okay, I'll just wait for the other questions, Mr. Chair. I won't respond to everything.
That's fine. Delegate Cox, then Grammer, then Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to make a comment. I'm reading the language of the bill, and this actually is not an amendment of the bill. It's an attempt to amend the statute that currently exists. Currently, in the statute, it's a shall.
Okay, Cox, not to cut you off, but I understand that there was an issue with that.
Let me
And
finish if I may. You are cutting me off.
I'm sorry, I said that,
Thank-
but I just wanted, but you weren't here. And I said I wasn't trying to change any existing law, and I think that was a mistake in drafting.
Oh, so is there a different amendment that we're not?
I'm trying to, I think after the questions, I'm trying to lean on council to help rectify the amendment. I wanted my amendment to apply to what we're adding, and I didn't want to change anything to existing law. So that's the only reason why I didn't, with all due respect, I really didn't mean to cut you off, but I said that before you got on the call.
So let me ask you this then. Are you still putting in may in the article?
I would like to put may when it relates to individuals that are not a family relation to the victim and in the age categories that this bill is adding. That's my intention.
Okay, so that still changes the substance of the law because presently the statute is a shall for all of these individuals. So to put a may in there is changing the whole scope of the statutory structure of registered sex offenders. And I think that that's something that we shouldn't be doing in an amendment. So I would oppose it for that purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, Delegate Cox, I very much apologize. I didn't want to be rude to you. I just wanted you to know what I was thinking.
No worries. Thanks so much.
Delegate Grammer, then Griffith.
Thank you for the second bite of the apple, Mr. Chair. And putting the technical issue aside, we're all doing our best to get these amendments accurate, and I understand that. But, the original, I think the point of the permanency of this was not necessarily just family. That I don't think that's the relationship in perpetuity, is the fact that, a lot of these were like coaches or people who were in a position of authority that after these incidents will probably continue to go on in that position of authority in guardianship over a child. And I think that was the intention here. So I appreciate the amendment, but considering some of the testimony on this, I putting the technical issue aside, I just, the way I feel, I can't support the amendment, but I appreciate it.
All right, go now to Delegate Griffith and Delegate Bart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to spend too much time, I'm actually blown away we're considering this amendment. I think this amendment is way outside of what we're trying to do here. I think it opens up Pandora's box, and and I don't say this, but for the love of God, don't accept this amendment.
All right, Delegate Bartlett.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Nobody likes this bill. I don't like the bill as written because before the amendment, or I have to talk about the amendment though, right? Is that what you said? Is that the way it works?
We're on the amendment.
Even if I talk about why I can talk about why I like the amendment.
Sure.
So the reason why I like the amendment is because of the word may. I do understand Delegate Cox's point. I think that is a valid point because this is it is a big deal type of bill. The reason why it's important to me to have the may is because of the inaccuracies if a person is not truly a sex offender. For instance, if they're, and yes, I'm saying this because I have a lot of history with this subject. So I will say that if a 17-year-old if a 22-year-old has sex with a 17-year-old or a 19-year-old has sex with a 17-year-old, would that 19-year-old be affected by this bill as without this amendment? Could that 19-year-old be under lifetime supervision? That's just a question I have.
They can be if they were in custody or control of the child. So if it was someone you were babysitting or you were the, AP class, helper, and you were helping, you know what I mean? So you had, and that's going to be, that would be my understanding. I'll look to counsel to answer your question. But you definitely can be considered in this bill if you had custody or care of that child. And I know in my own culture and in my own family, I cared for my younger siblings a lot.
Okay, and then I have one other quick question, if I may, Mr. Chair. How close, so is this amendment anywhere near what was done in the Senate?
No.
Okay.
The Senate, I will say this, the Senate's bill, from what I understand, is in a different posture than the bill as introduced. So the Senate's bill merges part of yet another bill onto the bill as introduced, and I think made some change to the bill. So one way or the other, there haven't been any bill or any amendments introduced to conform. So one way or the other, these two pieces of legislation, should they pass, will go to conference in some way.
Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to speak on the amendment. That was the reason why I like the amendment, just for the simple fact that it can have, it can include people that we may not want to include. Not that I support anyone who does anything to a child with respect to sexual offense. And so I just need to make that clear. And I say that in part to Delegate Griffith's response, because that is not my intention whatsoever. I just want to have also a level of fairness for some people who may be included, who, as some would say, there may be unintended consequences.
Delegate Arakan, then Delegate Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first of all, a 22-year-old cannot have custody of a 17-year-old. That 17-year-old is old enough to be on their own. So it wouldn't be a close in age situation. No judge is going to look at a 17-year-old and think that they were under the care and control of a 21-year-old.
I was a school teacher at 22, and I had lots of 17 and 18-year-old students,
And well, I would say in that situation, if you're a school teacher, you're exactly the kind of person who shouldn't be molesting students and who should be on a path to permanent supervision. That's crazy. I mean, we're debating now whether or not a person who legitimately has power over a child should not have, and this amendment is like, it's changing the whole system. So that, this is crazy, you guys. I can't imagine this is going to play out well when we get back home. I don't think any of our districts want to see child molesters not have supervision. Why would State's Attorney Braveboy send a letter in talking about the effectiveness of supervision if it didn't work? It works. It's not harmful to people that molest children to have somebody to check in on them to make sure they're not molesting children still. You guys, this is insanity, really.
Delegate Moon, then Delegate Malone, and the Vice Chair. Delegate Moon.
I'm sorry. So when did JPR vote this bill? I'm actually just curious about this aspect of the conversation.
Today.
I think they voted it just today. Yeah.
Today. And do we at least have the bill number for what bill it was they added to this?
I have the amendment.
Oh, you have the amendment. Would you mind sending that by email to us while the other people are talking? I just want to take a quick peek.
The crossfile is 333.
They didn't vote out 333. They voted out Senate Bill 268. It's a different topic, but
they amended it to 268.
Added this in.
Got it. Okay.
So I may have misspoke a little bit. They put two bills together. And that's what they did here. So.
And sorry, the part of this bill that they put in there is as introduced. So they didn't change this part.
I think there was a change.
It's different. It's quite different.
Aha.
16 and under. That's the
What?
main change.
They picked a different number, eh? Yeah, hold on.
All right, I'm going to go now to the vice chair. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Delegate Malone, the vice chair hasn't spoken yet on the bill, so I'll go to the vice chair and then I'll go to Delegate Malone. Vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a few comments. My first statement is that I have some serious concerns about this amendment as well. First, I think there have been a couple of scenarios given that have been accurate. Delegate Bartlett, you mentioned, I think you mentioned a 16-year-old in a relationship, perhaps, I think you said 19-year-old, I'm not sure. In Maryland, the age of consent is 16. So unless there is some type of rape or forced interaction, that is not a crime, okay? So that does not fall under this piece of legislation in terms of what we're talking about. So those folks are not going to be caught up there. Unless you're talking about a 16-year-old that is in the care and custody of a teacher inside the school, and the teacher forcibly rapes, penetrates, or abuses the child sexually inside the school, then it would fall under this. If it happens outside the school, the child is not in the care and custody of the teacher. So it's that narrow. So, and then also earlier, I think Delegate Fisher mentioned a tutor and a babysitter. I don't think they necessarily fall under this scenario as well. This is an incredibly narrow focused bill. And I think it closes a loophole. I want to touch on briefly, Mr. Chair, if I can. There was some talk about the hearing. But at the hearing, there was oral testimony, but if you take the time to read the written testimony, State's Attorney Braveboy makes a clear point of saying that recidivism decreases significantly. 79% of violent offenders reoffend within 6 years compared to 43% within 5 years of offenders that are on supervision. Quote, this is what we are trying to change. So we want to make sure that individuals who have sexually assaulted children that are in their care and custody, that they don't go out and commit the same offense. Also, in 2017, this body unintentionally created a loophole when we merged second-degree rape with second-degree sexual assault and categorize them the same. And so she also, actually, State's Attorney Braveboy mentions that as well. And so we capture kids that are 11 and under, but we created a loophole by not capturing kids that are 12 and older. So essentially, the policy of the state of Maryland right now is that if a parent or person who has care and custody that is responsible for the child, so we're not talking about an individual who comes over and tutors the child, they're not in their care and custody. We're not talking about your uncle or your friend who comes over and has an interaction with the child. We're not talking about the lifeguard at the pool. We are talking about somebody that has the actual care and custody of the child, and let's see, by force or by threat, has sexual interaction with them, with a child that is mentally incapacitated or physically incapable of consenting, they commit sexual offense against them. So this is what we're talking about. So it's not all of these scenarios that have been given. I think that we would be doing an incredible disservice to the state of Maryland and the kids if we were to pass this amendment, let alone not pass this bill. I think what also needs to be mentioned is that after 5 years on lifetime supervision, the individual can petition the court to come off. If they have complied with every aspect of their supervision, then the judge can say, yes, you cannot be on supervision anymore. If the judge says, no, you must remain on supervision, every subsequent year, every year, they can come back to the court and ask to come off supervision. So I think there's a lot of opportunity right there for judicial discretion. So with that, I would strongly urge a rejection of this amendment for the sole purpose of not protecting child abusers and child rapists who victimize children. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate.
Can I respond?
All right.
It's up to you.
Sure, I'm going to give you the chance to respond. We'll do that right now, but then I'm going to go to Delegate Malone and Delegate Bartlett. Delegate Fisher.
Okay. Well, one, I want to say, I think every member of this committee wants to protect children. And I think it's unfair to discredit that. And I think everyone on this committee has different experiences that they bring to the hard legislation that we work through. And especially on a topic like this, it's surprising that it's not worked through in subcommittee because it is such a difficult issue. I think for me, the reason why I'm offering these amendments is that I know the different facts and issues and people and factors that go into individual cases. And I think if someone can trust the judge's discretion in 5 years, then what's to say you can't trust the judge's discretion as the case is being brought? I think the issue is we do not want to pin people down forever. You're saying something that the word in it is lifetime. And I think that I continue to say on this and on many bills, if people believe that the incarceration and punishment on certain crimes need to be increased, then those bills should be brought forward. And that's all I have to say. I think it would be disingenuous and hurtful. And I've seen many colleagues on this call say they've been hurt by comments and this and that, to say that anyone on this call doesn't care about children, but we're here to make tough decisions and to make sure that there's fairness on both sides. And that's the hard part. And so I just really reject those comments that, I obviously care about kids and want people to be safe. And I would not want anyone to be harmed, but I also want there to be justice in our system. And I think that it wasn't easy for me to do amendments and express my concern on this topic, but I also can't sit here and just let everyone push an agenda and not actually have it discussed. This is the first time the committee's even discussing the legislation as a committee.
Delegate Malone, then Bartlett, then Grammer.
Well, I've already spoken, and so I wasn't looking for necessarily a second bite of the apple, but I do wish to move the question unfavorably.
Second.
Well, there are a couple more people. I understand that there are a couple people who've had their hands up. I'd like to have them be heard, and then we're going to move the question. We'll go to Delegate Bartlett, then Delegate Graham.
This is, I said it before and I say it again. All I wanted to say was thank you to Vice Chair Atterbury for explaining the law. It is not my intention to ever, and I say this as a victim, it is, and a survivor, it is never my intention to help sexual predators. That is never my intention. My intention is for defendants who may have been in a situation, and the judge, I wanted the judge to have that discretion. And please forgive my breakdown, but sometimes you mean not to cry and the tears come anyway. Just listen to my words. So thank you very much to Vice Chair Atterbury for just breaking it down so that I would understand the situation. And I just had to say that because I will never, ever support anyone who does this to a child. That's not my point. I'm done.
Committee, I would like to take a moment. I think it would be appropriate to take a moment here and come back at 6:15 and resume discussion on the legislation. So with that, we will come back at 6:15.
Hey, Lauren. Oh, shit, what was heard? Oh, it's not right now. I haven't said anything.
Delegate Malone, you're okay.
right? It wasn't. Hey, Dan Cox. Dan the man.
Sir.
Delegate, we're still live streaming.
Oh, we are. Okay.
Yes.
You're unmuted, Ron.
Ron, you're still unmuted.
I think he wants to be addressed properly as Supreme Court of Maryland, Watson.
Supreme Court of Maryland Watson, you're still on mute.
Thank you, Brandon.
Delegate Watson, you're still, you're not muted.
Hey, Lauren. Lauren. Hey, look, I was on
Delegate
a.
Watson, you're not muted.
I've been redoing
Are we back on yet, or are we still off?
Nope,
Not
not yet,
yet.
delegate.
Can someone please tell Dylan to let Delegate Cham in?
I'll let him know.
Thank you.
Register somewhere.
Moon, you're not muted.
On a regular basis and multiple things. So as much as it is
McComas, you're not muted.
in that way, Doug Aragon, I think this amendment, and again, I would want to
Delegate
council correct my intention behind.
McComas, mute.
Okay, just a minute, children.
Delegate Williams, you're not muted.
Oh.
We're live streaming.
Are we not coming back? Or are we coming back?
We'll be coming back shortly.
Is there any updates?
Dylan said, just hang tight. We'll be getting back soon.
All right, no problem. I'm okay if we want to wait.
We're still live streaming and we'll resume in a few minutes.
Okay.
Members of the committee, if you would please begin to return to the committee room, I would appreciate it. The virtual committee room, I should say.
Do we have to log out and log back in? Mine says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Dylan will fix that when he gets back, but you don't have to log out.
Thank you.
There you go.
Mine is also stopped.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. Dylan, I think your audio's on. This committee can be hard. This committee can be very, very hard. We deal with incredibly difficult issues. And I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. We deal with incredibly difficult issues, and we are but fragile people ourselves. And it's hard. Delegate Bartlett, I believe, and I will always believe, and do believe now, is an incredibly strong person and a great delegate for her constituents. And she is human, just as all of us are. And every single member of this committee loves her deeply and knows that this has been a very, very challenging debate for her. She is excused from further consideration on this bill. She's asked to be excused, and I'm granting that. But I do want to recognize her and recognize the strength that she has and that she continues to have, and let her know how proud we are of her. So with that, it is my understanding that Delegate Fisher wishes to withdraw the amendment that she submitted, the first amendment that of the two that she was bringing on House Bill 531. The second amendment that she has submitted to the committee, in the opinion of the chair, would violate the single subject rule, and in that it would add a bill that has a significantly different subject matter to the subject of this bill, and so would be out of order. I'm happy to take any comments regarding that. But at this point,
Mr. Chair, I did call for another opinion in our leadership who deals with the rules and says it's not necessarily a different subject, as they both deal with registries. So I don't know who makes that final determination.
Ruling of the chair that the second amendment that would be offered by Delegate Fisher is out of order for being of a different subject. And while it is of a different, it does address a registry, this legislation deals with the lifetime supervision, not a registry, of sex offenders. And that is a different group of people who's being covered. And it's also a different category between a registry and lifetime supervision. That's the ruling of the chair. Seeing no further discussion regarding the ruling of the chair, there are no further amendments that have been submitted on this legislation. We're on the bill.
Move favorable.
There's a motion for a favorable and a second. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 531?
Yes.
Delegate Fisher.
I just wanted to say that I want to appreciate this committee very, very much. I appreciate everybody dealing with a very difficult topic. And I'm emotional because I really did not appreciate the comments that were made on this. People have different intentions, and people are here for child abusers and other issues. And I commend, as you said, Delegate Bartlett, and I discussed my amendments at length with Delegate Bartlett, and other members of our committee who are very supportive of them. And so I just want to say again how offended I was by those comments, how I think we're all searching for justice on hard issues. to make sure that they work for everybody. And that bills take work and time. You know, the issues brought up about, you know, people can apply every 5 years to get off the registry. I haven't seen any data presented to this committee on how many people are on those registries, and when they apply, they actually get off. You know, we're voting for them, we just don't know that. And if someone else knows that information, I would love to hear that. And so, you know, I just wanted, for the record and for the public, you know, I might not be a mother yet, but I have young nephews, I have children in my life, and I think we all care. I think, I'm, as a practicing attorney and a former prosecutor and a current defense attorney, I'm in courtrooms every day. And it's tough. And I think it's hard to see people's lives ruined forever. And there's never a winner. The victim's not a winner. The defendant's not a winner. Families are hurt. We really do make tough decisions. And so I appreciate my chair for having the discussion. I really appreciate all the committee members for viewing these amendments with full eyes and full hearts. And I just wanted to just express that because I think that it's really, really important that, and as I've heard many times on many other topics in this committee, that people are coming with a genuine heart. People aren't saying their opinion or putting an amendment forward from a disingenuous place. And so I just hope that our committee knows that that's for me, and that it does take strength to stand up when everyone wants you to do something. And there's no discussion on it. And so I just wanted that to be known for the record. And I really want to thank everyone for their listening ear and for their time.
Thank you, Delegate Fisher. Delegate Grammer on the bill.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to echo your words. The committee's tough for everyone. It's tough for me, and it's probably very tough to speak up for fairness. And I just wanted to say that I learned something from everybody here, and I appreciate when someone speaks up for fairness. We don't always agree, but I really do appreciate the comments from Delegate Fisher and Delegate Bartlett, especially when you speak up for fairness. Just wanted to put that on the record.
Delegate Cardin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to echo the comments of Delegate Fisher. I actually usually don't get emotional, although I do take things personally, and I try not to. And I want to say that, and I want to applaud you, Mr. Chairman, by the way, although not just for this bill, but for many of the bills that we deal with, that the professionalism with which most of us carry ourselves is really something to be praised about this committee. That being said, one of my questions about this bill and on the bill, Mr. Chair, is as Delegate Fisher has already mentioned, is that we have to distinguish between doing something because it's going to keep people safe. Maybe supervision is the right way to go. Lifetime supervision is appropriate for certain people, versus punishment, which is what I was hearing a lot of the people speaking about before we took the break, which is we need to continue to punish these people because of how horrible they are. And that is not the reason that I'm going to be voting in favor of this bill. I do not believe that we should be punishing people through this process of supervision. That is what jail is for. That is not what supervision is for. And I think that there is a punishment aspect to this, which concerns me, which is why the statistics that Delegate Fisher was talking about, that we should know, we should actually know those. And maybe that's something that we can look into in the future, Mr. Chair, is to find out if people aren't being let off of this when they appropriately should be. I think it's good to make sure that we are treating 11-year-olds and 14-year-olds the same, because the crimes being committed against them are heinous and horrible. And so I will support it, but I also think we've got to be very careful about what we say and how we act, that we are not doing these kinds of policies reasons of punishment and retribution, but rather to keep people safe. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Erican, then Delegate Comas.
Move the previous question, sir.
There's a motion for the previous question. With respect, Delegate McComas.
Second.
I just want to say I have had the opportunity to view.
Delegate
sort of-
McComas, let me stop you briefly. This will be the last comment, then we will
Yeah.
move to the question. Delegate.
I have had the opportunity to be on the House Judiciary Committee since 2003. And I've heard a lot of the issues, not necessarily this particular bill, but the whole issue of the effects of abuse to children and how impactful they are. And I served with a colleague, which I didn't know, his son had been abused by Father Tui at John Carroll. And I guess it was sort of in the mid, maybe 2010 area, that his dad came down here and sent letters to Mike Miller as well as Speaker Bush, and he made appointments and everything. And he told me that he was scared to death every night if he'd get a telephone call about 2 o'clock in the morning, because he was afraid his son would take his life. And this was a very devoted dad. He was a deacon in the Catholic Church. He would go down and see Cardinal Keeler and everything. And there was no mention by the Cardinal of how's your son doing? And he knew his son had been abused. The son, it ripped the community apart. Some people believed the son, others didn't. Anyway, and they also had, I think Thomas Roberts, I believe he was a commentator on maybe CNN or something. Well, he came to testify as well. Anyway, the bottom line is that I've seen a lot of folks that are very impacted, and it's hurt them terribly. I think CT is someone that has championed folks that have been abused and wrote a book. And I guess CT Wilson, our delegate, and I guess what I'm saying is that if you look at what State's Attorney Braveboy said, that hey, it helps, it keeps them on the right track. It's not a punishment; it's just sort of an encouragement to keep doing what they're doing so they don't get in trouble again. So I guess what I'm saying is that this really hurts people's souls. It really hollows out their souls, and it goes to their core. And I think that that's why this bill's needed. And I mean, if we have to work on the other end, that if people are doing really well and they're in their 80s and all that good stuff, and then maybe they ought to get off the registry. But I think that this is a start. It doesn't mean it'll finish. Medicine, technology, all those things continue. But I just think that after this is the 19th year, this is really, really impactful for folks. So I just, I think we're going in the right direction right now. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you very much. We're on the bill. Going to take a roll call. The Vice Chair.
Yes.
Delegate Anderson is excused. Delegate Arakan.
Yes.
Delegate Bartlett is excused. Delegate Cardin.
Yes.
Delegate Conaway.
Yes.
Delegate Cox.
Yes.
Delegate Grammer.
Yes.
Delegate Griffith.
Yes.
Sorry, repeat that, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Delegate Rachel Jones.
Yes.
Delegate Lopez.
Yes.
Delegate Malone.
Yes.
Delegate McComas.
Yes.
Delegate Moon.
Yes.
Delegate Shetty.
Yes.
Delegate Cham.
Yes.
Delegate Watson.
Yes.
Delegate Williams.
Yes.
Delegates Crutchfield, Davis, and Fisher are excused. With 16. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes tonight's voting session for the House Judiciary Committee. We will vote again tomorrow at 10:30. Thank you all.